Oh, yeah. We are live on a Thursday night. Sigmund Bloom here with Chris Allen, Matt Waldman, Dr. Jene Bramel. Matt Waldman, I'll toss it to you first. This is going to be Mike White's big national showcase. Not quite, but still an interesting game so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what you'd expect. The Jets defense is weak, so they're able to run the ball. You get lots of Jonathan Taylor, a sprinkling of big plays from Nyheim Hines, out in space. Hines had a nice reversal of field touchdown run. Early in the game, Taylor's been catching the ball out of the backfield as well. So it's a two-headed type of deal with Taylor clearly in the lead, but still Hines providing the big plays. And Michael Pittman, it's kind of one of those plays. Is it a catch? Is it not a catch? Well, they ruled it a catch, at least overruled it. And he scored. However you want to look at it, I don't really care. They scored it as a touchdown. He got open. He did a good job getting open. And then on the Jet side, Mike White started good. He was throwing the ball downfield more because the defense forced him to. And, he looked pretty darn good to, for a guy who hasn't played in quite a while other than this Bengals game where they were kind of sleepwalking a bit. But he looked promising, and then he hurt his arm, and it looks like I don't know exactly, but I would hazard to guess based on how he's trying to explain things on the sideline. He probably has some numbness in his fingers.
Right.
Can't feel the ball. Yeah. So some sort of nerve thing. And they're waiting to see if that'll clear up, and hopefully he can get back in the game because he was finding, Elijah Moore for a touchdown. He was finding Keenan Allen in the middle of the field. He had a good vibe of being able to stay in the pocket and maneuver and do things that Zach Wilson, the cakeless Zach Wilson has difficulty doing at this point. So hopefully as I heard on the couch the other day with Eric Stoner, Stoner maybe needs to help Zach get directions to the bakery, and then and if that happens, then maybe things will work out for him. But White was off to a good start. Josh Johnson is in the game, and he's not awful, considering that they've had to blow the cobwebs off of him and get a duster and that kind of thing. But how much feel are you really going to have in the pocket when you've probably played like 6 times in 15 years that he's been in the league, something like that. So he's an audible on the couch Bloom and Cecil favorite from way back in the day, San Diego. So the Toreros, yes. So yeah, that's the game. It's a fun game for what it is,
Yeah, a couple of things I was going to sift through. Josh Johnson, Marshawn Lynch, it's his cousin, is the reason that he's a running back. Marshawn wanted to be a quarterback, but Josh Johnson went to the same high school. Was like Oakland Tech maybe. So in this game, Elijah Moore, you see how dynamic he is on the few plays he touches the ball. Keelan Cole, a professional, just making professional plays out there. Mike White, what you love seeing is his clarity when he reads the field, the visual information he gets, the decisions he makes. Just a decisive, confident quarterback out there. So it was sad to see him go down. Everything looks easy for the Indy offense. Pittman and Taylor look like they're just going to be a 1-2 punch for a long time. Really good 1-2 punch for the Colts. So they got that at least taken care of. Let's get some injury news taken care of with Dr. Jene Bramel. Doc, first, a preliminary question, not my real question. Did you see Mike White, what they were doing with him on the sidelines, or any insight, anything to add with that injury?
No, not too much. From what I can tell, I didn't see the injury, but I saw some of the replays of what they were doing. Just look, probably, and I didn't actually see what happened. You guys may need to fill me in a little bit, but my guess is that he got hit on that forearm and kind of compressed the nerve against the bone there, and just as you said, kind of had a dead hand situation where it's got a nerve contusion. Either has so much tingling that he's having pain, or just doesn't have enough grip strength to continue. So that's probably where we are. Did he take a hit? Is that what y'all saw?
Yeah, which is like deflected off something. So Kyler Murray, I mean, even if we do see, because it's like Cliff Kingsbury's preparing us for this. He can play without practice. Okay, well, if he plays without practice, what should we expect, Gene?
I think he's actually preparing us for the opposite. Everybody has said that Hopkins has and will continue to play without practice, but Kingsbury on Wednesday said that you just we're going to see if he can go or not. We're not sure. And that's enough for me to suggest that they don't think that he's right and that we're definitely not going to see him practice. And that aggravation he went through in the first half of last Thursday's game was significant enough to keep him out for at least a week. So I'm going to be surprised if we see him play, despite the fact that he's only missed a couple of games in his career so far. I think he's doubtful. If he does play, then I think we run the risk of seeing him very limited targets, potential for another in-game aggravation. And at this point, I think you would hope that the Cardinals rest him and he's back sooner than later.
Matt.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was trying to listen to the injury thing there for what Aaron Andrews had to say. How about Derrick Henry? Let's just talk. Let's get that out of the way. Are we looking at 10 weeks, closer to 10 weeks than 6 with him?
Yes. Yeah. So Jones fractures, we hear commonly that players try to return within 6 to 8 weeks, and that structurally that Dr. Anderson, the surgeon that usually does these procedures, is comfortable with players returning that soon, knowing that the bone is stabilized by the screw. But many players that try to return that soon aren't quite ready to come back yet. They're still dealing with some soreness in the area. They're not able to move as much as possible. And Henry is 255 pounds. So this isn't these wide receivers that we've seen struggle come back in 6 to 8 weeks in the past. I think 6 to 10 is a reasonable expectation. And where we're going to be is, as long as the Tennessee Titans continue to win games, that I think Henry is possibly back for the playoffs, maybe in week 17 in a must-win play-in type situation, but definitely the end of his regular season as far as fantasy purposes go. And you'd cross your fingers that he's recovered well enough to come back, but I think this is going to be closer to 8 to 10 than 6 to 8 for sure.
So, Dr. Gene, so the Dolphins going to, or I think they're actually playing the Texans in Miami this weekend, but we've got Tua dealing with a ribs injury and also something with his finger, Devontae Parker with a shoulder and also his hamstring. Those are the guys that I know a lot of folks are going to want to be rostering this weekend. So can you give them an update on that? What's your spidey sense there?
I don't think there's going to be too much concern with Tua. There's been some rib issues, obviously, for a while. We know that there's some fractures there and they will not fully heal for a period of time yet, but I'm not aware of him taking any additional hits where he's at risk of not being able to play. Parker was at least active last week. I don't know how effective he has been playing through these injuries. The shoulder is an ongoing listing on the injury report, but I don't think it's the primary concern. It's whether or not that hamstring soreness has caused any aggravations or if he felt worse after the game. But to see him take back-to-back limited practices, I think he's going to be active again.
You're listening to the Audible, watching the Audible Thursday night, week 9. I'm going around the horn. Dr. Jene Bramel. Now, Gene, you're impeccable. So the fact that you heard DeAndre Hopkins when I asked about Kyler Murray, that's meaningful to me, first of all. All right. Not quite sure what it means.
I was thinking at the end, they're like, gosh, he asked about Hopkins, but I should probably talk about Murray too.
and that's perfect. It's perfect. Because and what it means is I know that you've got a concern, and folks need to know that. And Hopkins has been a player that we've he's hurt, he's questionable, but it's different. But what about Kyler Murray? Because is it different than last year when he played through an injury and for a little while the offense shrunk? He just wasn't nearly as effective. A different injury, but again, Cliff Kingsbury saying he can play without practicing too.
Yeah, well, we'll see, right? So I think Murray probably has a slightly better chance to play than Hopkins this week, but there's not been a lot of optimism out of Arizona about Murray either. That injury is not a straightforward low ankle sprain that's minor. I wouldn't go so far to say it's a high ankle sprain. There were definitely some thoughts about that, but it's kind of an injury to the inside of his foot or his ankle. Jay Glazer called it a 1 to 3 week injury. We're probably not going to see Murray return to practice at all. They're going to continue to allow him to have some treatment as much as possible. And I think if Murray does play, we're not going to see him run the ball in anything close to his usual fashion. He's going to be limited in the pocket a little bit. And with A.G. Green out with COVID and DeAndre Hopkins arguably not practicing, his options are going to be limited. So, if that's the case, you could see the Cardinals say, if you're not 100% and we don't have your legs as an option to be used as a weapon, then maybe we're going to allow you to heal as well, so that this isn't something that begins to stretch into future weeks. So I think he's got a little bit better chance to play than Hopkins, but I'm not that optimistic about him either.
Gene, how long will it be before Russell Wilson's on the field giving Bloom the overly calculated friendly finger?
He clearly wants to play coming out of the bye. in week 10 for Seattle. So the pin came out on time. He is already, I don't know if he's been cleared to throw or if he's just decided he's going to do it on his own. But what the hurdle he needs to clear is he needs to be able to have enough grip strength and range of motion that he can make all the throws that he needs to make downfield and otherwise. And he's got 10 more days to make that happen. Looks like he's making some progress so far. No guarantee he's going to be able to do that, but if he's close, then I think they may let him try. Geno Smith's been playing well, though, so if there's any question with how things are going through the bye week and that grip strength isn't there, watching him throw the ball, he obviously wasn't zipping it around. So, it's hard to know whether or not he's going to regain enough of that grip strength to be able to be effective in a couple of weeks. But his target is week 10, and if he can make it, he's going to.
Gene, I know you already talked about, I thought I heard a discussion about Sam Darnold and PJ Walker in the chat over there. I know the hit on Sam Darnold, I would have spontaneously combusted had I been hit the way that he was. But I think the big question, though, is about Christian McCaffrey. I know that Matt Rule had said McCaffrey was pretty limited, I think was the phrase that he used yesterday, which I have no idea what that means.
Very limited versus extremely limited based on
everybody. Yeah. I mean, but
all
what
these
can
throwaway words, right?
Yeah, I don't expect him to play this week, but do you expect him to play, or at the very least, can we expect him back in week 10?
No, I'm with you. I think they're targeting week 10, and we sort of said from the beginning that these aggravations take longer to heal than the original injury. And, everybody hopes that when players are put on injured reserve right now, that it's a 3-week situation, but that's not a foregone conclusion. This always seemed like they had a good chance that this week he was going to be questionable at very best, because you'd want him to get back and as close to fully reconditioned as possible. And for them to still say he's limited, for him really not to have been doing much in practice prior to this week, suggests that they're going to give him a little bit more time. So I didn't hear enough about today's practice to know whether or not he made a lot more progress than expected. I don't think that was the case from what I've been able to see so far. So my guess is he's not going to be moved to the active roster until next week, but leave the door open in case something changes there. But I think it's going to be week 10 for McCaffrey as well.
Dr. Gene, there's so many ways we could go with all this IR return guys, right? There's so many. Every time we do the Waiver show and I hear you go through the list and try to give the updates the best you can, I feel for you because you're doing a thorough job on something that's uncharted territory. And it's kind of a two-part question. The first part is, it sure seems to me like, I think because of the IR return 3-week designation, we are underestimating the time that all these guys are going to miss. I mean, very few of them have come back after 3 weeks. And even the ones that do seem like they have a chance to come back, say within the first week or two that they're eligible, still don't end up coming back until week 3, week 4. But I do want to highlight the one guy who seems like he is going to be there right on the scene for us, George Kittle, of course. So tell me about your outlook for Kittle this week, and then flesh out, if you can, this. We're adjusting to this new reality because it's here to stay, the IR return, but 3 weeks rarely happens.
I think the more important thing with this new injured reserve is teams can use this once during the season for every one of their players. So I think it's more meaningful if a team chooses not to use injured reserve than if they do. And then we're reliant on the initial timetable, because the other thing this injured reserve situation has done is teams don't have to give us any updates. They get asked about it in the press conferences on Monday every week, how close are their players, but they don't really have to give us any meaningful updates. And when they do, they're not really beholden to anything. We've heard about Michael Gallup being ready to come back and then not, and then maybe another week goes by. We just don't really know because we're not getting formal practice reports. We're just reliant on what beat writers see on the side rehab fields and so on and so forth. So it's helpful for teams, and it's helpful for us because it gives us a different signpost in there. But yeah, players that go on injured reserve, we're all hopeful that they're only going to miss 3 weeks or 4, depending on if there's a bye in between. It's 3 games, but it's kind of hard to read a little bit. Kittle looks like he's been ready to go for a while. This gave the Niners exactly what they wanted, which is a way to allow Kittle to heal without trying to push it toward the end of the week and then playing through an injury where he was trying to get 95% of the snaps, despite the fact that he clearly wasn't himself. So this had the look of probably a 2-week injury, but they said, we're going to shut you down, and it's going to end up being a month before you come back so that you're ready to go. Again, he's not been moved to the active roster yet, so we don't know whether or not he would actually be considered as a full practice or even listed on the injury report whatsoever. But that's sort of the tone of what we're hearing from the Niners beat writers is, he was designated to return very quickly. He's essentially been fully practicing. There's no concern that for some reason he's not going to be able to be moved to the active roster this week. And I think you would see him take a fairly sizable portion of the target share right away, especially if, Deebo Samuel may be a little bit more limited by the calf injury. That doesn't sound like there's any issue with him playing this week, but he may not be as healthy as he was going into last week. And then Elijah Mitchell dealing with some rib issues as well. So I think we see Kittle back at a very sizable workload right away.
Gene, we know you like caramels, but do you like Reese's?
Sure.
I got a whole bunch of Reese's for you I left over from Halloween. If you can tell me the theme of the people I keep asking questions about. Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown seems to be somebody that we want to see come back, or at least some of us do. That's a hint. So what do we think about Antonio Brown's prospects of coming back in the next couple of weeks?
Well, as long as we're overestimating things tonight, you have clearly overestimated my ability to remember who you might have asked about 5 minutes ago. So, as Bloom is, he asked me about Kyler Murray, and I answered him about DeAndre Hopkins. So, to expect me to have any clue at all, I think you're going to be keeping your Reese's.
I'll give them to you anyway.
Which means
they're good for memory.
Antonio Brown. See, I was almost forgetting who you were asking about.
Almost forgot
now. Brown's situation is difficult because I'm still not certain we know exactly what his injury is. We're talking about kind of the inside of the ankle again. Is that a code word for a high ankle sprain? Is there something more going on there? Another player, that you'd feel a little bit better about because he didn't go on injured reserve. Hopefully that means that they're expecting him to come out of the bye week healthy. Hopefully that proves to be the case. But yeah, the Bucs have already proven that they're going to allow their players to fully recover before they bring them back. Rob Gronkowski going through back spasms last week notwithstanding, they at least gave him the extra time necessary until he was able to be cleared for contact to the point where he wasn't at risk of an aggravation. So I think I'd consider him probable to be healthy enough to play after the bye and get back to his usual role in the slot, but we'll see how things go.
So, Dr. Gene, with Baltimore essentially pivoting to being more of a pass-friendly offense, we've got, most of them playing well. Got Marquise Brown playing well, Mark Andrews, obviously. But what about Sammy Watkins now? Because everybody wants to try and start Rashad Bateman. But is Sammy Watkins practicing now? Do we think he's going to come back this week and muddy the waters for everybody?
Did he practice this today?
Yes, I heard he had practiced today.
Okay, yeah. Well, so I was kind of shocked to see him not practicing on Wednesday, which made me think that maybe there was something that happened during the bye week that was a little bit more of a setback, because I think the expectation was he was going to be able to return coming out of the bye. So hopefully today was a test day to see if he responds well to whatever individual drills they were able to do. If that's the case, then I give him a much better chance of playing than I thought he had yesterday. But we're going to have to see back-to-back practices and something pretty positive out of Baltimore, because I think they're seeing enough from those young wide receivers that they don't necessarily need Sammy Watkins. Now they're going to put him on the outside and let him stretch the field with vertical routes. I think that's possible, if not likely, but I don't know that he's going to take a lot of targets from the other two players, or three actually, including Andrews, right? I think you'd put Watkins as fourth in the mix there. And as you said, if they're becoming a pass first team and they're going to start running, different versions of 4 routes and 4 verticals, Watkins fits in there. But I don't think he's going to threaten the other three's target share right now.
Let's go one more round because there's a lot going on, a lot of ins, a lot of outs. But remember, folks, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, we'll be back. Chris Allen and I doing start sit questions. Dr. Gene with some injury updates. Let's see. How important is it, Dr. Gene, that Elijah Mitchell sheds the non-contact jersey, or his practice status next week? Is he doubtful side of questionable, probable side of questionable, shrug his shoulders, questionable?
I think he's okay. Him being back to practice today and a little bit better tone of voice from Kyle Shanahan about how he's doing made me feel pretty good. I didn't feel great about him yesterday. There wasn't a lot that had you concerned. He was able to return to last week's game. Rib injuries can be pretty variable in terms of what they mean for running backs. But I think the tone of Thursday's press conference was pretty reassuring. So I'm expecting to see him practice tomorrow. Probably going to be listed questionable, but I think he is going to be the lead back again for San Francisco this week.
So how far away is Jeff Smith from being able to take the field?
Jeff Wilson? Jeff Smith?
Jeff Wilson. I don't know. Here,
Jeff Smithson.
let me clear
All right,
things
so-
up in here.
Okay, so
There we go.
who have you asked me about? You asked me about
Will Jefferson.
you asked me
Well-
about you asked me about Derrick Henry. You asked me about Antonio Brown.
Well, then, if we're going to follow
Russell-
that theme,
Russell Wilson.
then Russell Wilson.
Yep.
And not if we're going to follow that theme, if we were going to continue that, then I'd have to ask you about Aaron Rodgers.
Mm.
Mhm.
You know, Bloom knows what I'm talking about.
What am I missing? I'm missing
The
something.
look.
I-
I need that look.
All players at Bloom is not personally.
Yeah,
fond
this
of.
is all.
Oh well, okay, yeah, well, I
right.
get that. I didn't realize you were not personally. I knew DeAndre Hopkins and Aaron Rodgers.
Well,
I don't-
they're just
what's
players
up with
at
Derrick
different
Henry?
times. No, I don't. I have. Well, there was earlier. I wasn't a
All right.
fan of Derrick Henry. This is early. I made
All right.
mistakes were made.
Yeah.
Not saying that you didn't like their talent. I'm just saying,
Right.
like personally, like you probably wouldn't want to go out and like get a coffee with them or something.
Well,
Yeah.
It just makes me feel better that I'm not under the interrogation lamp here a little bit, and I have no desire to talk about Aaron Rodgers. Enough said.
So who are we talking about before?
Uh,
Jeff Wilson. There we go.
Jeff Wilson.
yeah, so,
another return to practice.
really
yeah.
good to know that they opened his practice window from the PUP list. I don't think he's going to play this week, but it really wasn't clear. John Lynch over the past couple of weeks kind of suggested that it sounded like he was at least a month away, and that we were maybe looking more towards the end of November until the middle of November. But progress has been made. He's been cleared to practice a little bit. He's got to go through the reconditioning process. They may take all 3 weeks. And actually, I think it might even be as long as 5 now with some of the COVID restrictions over the past couple of years. And they've got a little bit more time with the PUP list as well. But I think I don't expect them to play this week. Next week is now clearly on the table. But depending on, how well the rest of the players play and how healthy, we see Mitchell and Hasty and Sermon over time remain, they may give Wilson as much time as possible to get into reconditioning phase. So he's right up, 4 to 6 months is usually what we hear with these injuries. We're going on 5 to 6 now. And the practice window is open. So I think week 10, definitely more likely than week 9, but would not shock me if we didn't see him until 11 or 12.
Danny Pinter just scored a touchdown.
big
on
man
throwback.
touchdown.
Big man
and he-
touchdown. Very
He
nice.
got his hands under the ball better than Cortland Sutton ever could.
Now you forgot who I was going to ask about. Oh no, now I know. Kenny Golladay. We haven't seen him in like a month. I
There's
think he
another.
got it in a limited practice today, maybe.
Yeah.
But with everybody else banged up for the Giants, I mean, can we expect him back anytime
Who knows
soon?
what's going on in New York this week, Chris, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and all of those wide receivers, I don't think any of them are healthy right now. John Ross back on the injury report today with what I think was listed as a quad. We're hearing that Kadarius Toney's injury was a thumb laceration, so he's got a chance probably to play through that. Sterling Shepard is not going to play. I don't know that Golladay is going to be ready at all. So lots of struggles there a little bit. If Golladay has been cleared to practice, you'd like his chances of. I think he's close. And earlier in the week, Joe Judge was trying to be hopeful for both Saquon Barkley and and Kenny Golladay. So Golladay has always been a player that seems like he ends up missing an extra week or two. I don't know if he's slow to heal or if he's, getting the bad side of variance from the coach speak, and we're led to believe he's 1 to 2 week injury when it's always been a little bit more than that. That's a player then, if he was able to do a little bit more on Thursday, that Friday's practice participation is going to be pretty important. But if he's back on the practice field, he's obviously trending in a good direction.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Okay, because I just have to say this. This is because I know how much of a fan that we all are of Steve Smith.
Mm.
So I just read that Steve Smith before tonight's football game, literally looked into the camera and said, "Odell Beckham is good. Baker Mayfield isn't." Now I know Baker might not like this because I know he hears things, but son, let me just tell you something. Now focus here, folks. He said, "You're average. You're not very good, and Odell is moving on because of you, bro. Bottom line."
Tell him.
Well, yeah. It's the way the truths become known, or at the very least, the dirty laundry gets aired. One last one, real quick, Gene, before I let you go, because David Flynn had to go in the chat room. CeeDee Lamb,
Yeah,
the ankle injury. We're guessing. What are we guessing?
I'm just guessing. I have no idea. This is probably, you all can think about this similar to how you thought about Darren Waller. a couple of weeks ago, which is we don't know the nature of the ankle injury, whether it was just a rolled ankle where they're just giving him a little bit of treatment time. Dallas routinely lets their veterans sit if they know they're going to play. Or it could be that his ankle got tangled up and it's a high ankle situation. If that happens on Wednesday in practice, he's not playing this week. So I was a little bit reassured when they said we expect him to practice in limited fashion today. That was good news. And then for him to be listed as a DNP, I don't know what to make of that. So
Right.
I'm going to choose to be optimistic that it's a minor injury, and the fact that they thought they could get him back to a limited practice is reassuring. And then just decided to be pretty cautious by getting some treatment, and we'll see him back on the practice field tomorrow. If it's a Friday DNP, then this one is going to go down to the Adam Schefter tweets overnight on Saturday to give us a sense of where we actually live. But I'd be prepared for him not to be on the field this week. But I'm not saying that's the case, but at least go in with that thought that it's possible.
Cecil would say they can beat Denver without CD Lamb. So come on, let's see, right?
I mean, for the last few weeks, until last week, CD and Amari Cooper were not getting a ton of targets anyway. So
right.
They get so many weapons there, they'll find a way.
Yeah.
Dallas can beat Denver without CD Lamb, but you cannot win your fantasy league without the help of Dr. Jene Bramel. As it gets thicker and thicker every single week, and he's there always. We're never out in the wilderness when it comes to injuries because we've got Dr. Jene helping us always. Again, we'll see you back Sunday morning, Doc.
Indeed. You guys have a good rest of your week.
All right. Now
see you.
I have to skillfully do this real quick. I don't want you to be cut in half there, Matt Waldman. So we had the big man touchdown. I mean, this game is kind of turning into a bit of a laugher. I don't know. And Chris and I recorded an awesome video. It was a very enjoyable time talking about Derrick Henry, talking about the wake, what comes after. But Matt, I would talk about this earlier today. I'm going to tee you up with this. The Colts scored another touchdown, whatever. Santa Claus, man. Santa Claus. I love it because I think that I mentioned this when Erickson was on the couch, just that this whole Santa Claus, Adrian Peterson, attaching those two cultural images to each other, to me, it says something about being open, having your imagination open to things that maybe you thought were not possible when it comes to Adrian Peterson. So I know just from watching the leagues that we're in together, Matt, that you and I are of the same mind on this, which is fun for me because, then you're not the wet blanket. You're the tree skirt under the Christmas tree with presents to open with Adrian Peterson and Santa Claus. So sell everyone out there, anybody who did pick up Adrian Peterson, make them feel happier tonight. You're on mute.
Look at that. A couple of things. I mean, I think, first of all, the reason I call him Fantasy Santa Claus is that way back in the day when he injured his ACL, I said there's no such thing as Santa Claus. And then he comes out and, basically threatens the rushing record, at that point, coming back from the ACL. And at that point on, I was like, I believe in Santa Claus. So, and ever since, when you watch him, I mean, in Minnesota, when they got rid of him, we can look back in hindsight, and it was clearly the offensive line and the change in run scheme, because he looked good when he was in Arizona on film. The thing is that the people who just look at the box score, or they look at the gains, but they don't really understand the run design or what he does to set things up, may miss out on the fact that he still has burst. He still has cutting ability. He still has great vision. Speaking of a 28, there's Taylor rumbling down for that 42nd point right there. But he still has everything but the breakaway speed. And you can say, well, he only averaged 3.1 yards per carry in Detroit. Well, I studied him in Detroit, and it was abundantly clear that he played well. I mean, and he only had like 4 games where he had over 15 carries. When he did, he had pretty big games. He scored touchdowns. He can still catch the ball pretty well. He's very explosive in and out of cuts still at this point. And he has loads of stamina. So when you put all that together, I mean, this guy's a freak of nature. The fact that everywhere he's gone, the coaches are like the same fantasy analysts who go, well, he only averaged 3.1 yards per carry, and he hasn't had a 100-yard game since this time, and he got cut by the Vikings, and he's this age, so really, how good can he be? And then he comes in, and he literally is the best athlete on the running back depth chart still. And this has happened year after year after year post-Vikings, where the coaches say, we couldn't believe what we saw. We had to sign him right away as soon as he worked out, because we were like, he's got more stamina, more strength, more quickness than anybody on our team right now. And maybe that's because those teams didn't have a Derrick Henry, or they didn't have, someone special on that roster as a runner. But now he's going to Tennessee, where, listen, Jeremy McNichols is a nice combine guy. Like, if you look at his combine, you're going to see that he had, that he had good metrics. You're going to like that he has a low to ground, kind of low center of gravity. He had 1,700 yards rushing as at Boise State. He had production. So the guys who look at the market share, they look at the metrics, and they look at that, that's going to ring a lot of bells for them. But here's the thing. Mike James and Peyton Barber beat him out in Tampa Bay, and neither of them were drafted, I believe, at that point. And if they were drafted later than him. They basically leapfrogged him on the depth chart. He struggled. I remember hearing Ray Rice comparisons to McNichols, and the only thing that was in common is their size and some of their metrics, and the fact that he could do some work in space. But between the tackles, about the only, he was about as far away from Ray Rice as you could get between the tackles. He's just not that refined of a player. And so the fact that the Titans in the same day cut Mekhi Sargent, basically a scat back who is a notable free agent at Iowa, who's a polished scat back who forced his way into an active role, so that they can make room not only for Peterson, but for Donta Foreman, who played on that team before, who's also a big back. That tells you that, yes, Jeremy McNichols will have a role, and it'll be locked down as the scat back space guy. But what they want to do is continue doing what they like to do best, which is pound the rock with a fullback in front. They've got Blasingame, who's a good fullback, and have Peterson running behind him like he was back at Oklahoma or early career Minnesota, or single backfields where Tannehill's under center and he's got 7 yards to read the line, get downhill. And I'm sorry, but I don't think there's a back other than maybe Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry in this league right now. And the other guy who's out of the league who would be in that would be Marshawn Lynch, who you do not want running downhill 7 yards into a defender. Because I'm going to tell you, he's going to, Marshawn, when they have a collision, Adrian Peterson's that 57 Chevy with the steel body, and when he hits all these he's going to, all these fiberglass SUVs and like aluminum SUVs, they're going to be totaled. He's just going to pound out the bumper and just keep it moving. I mean, he's built differently. I don't know why that is. I don't know the deal, but he's built differently. He's like the old Terminator, and I don't think there's going to be any issue with him carrying the ball 15, 16 times a game. And we may be wrong. Maybe he falls off the cliff and the age dragons come and eat his body alive, like everybody's afraid that will happen. But for the past 5 years, he's pretty much proven that wrong. We could probably count 7, since everybody seems to think 29 is the big number. If that's the case, for 7 years, he's basically given them the mean finger, to that extent. So I'm buying him and hoping that I can ride him as a running back too, occasionally as running back one production. And why not? I mean, that's the way I look at it, because he's still good.
Claus. Yeah, believe in Santa. No, I'm with you. I grabbed him everywhere I could, and it's just he's one of the best. He's one of the best on the planet at running the football. And like you said, you get him in a downhill situation, which is what they want to do, and he's in his natural environment. It's going to be really fun to watch. One of the things you reminded me of, by the way, is the 57 Chevy. I'm just going to go on a quick tangent here. Grand Royal Magazine was the magazine that the Beastie Boys label put out. There were only 5 issues of it ever. It was an incredible magazine. It covered everything, anything you could possibly imagine. I think it was Spike Jonze, like the director. I think it was him. I could be wrong. The director of like the music videos and films. And they went to Tulare County, which I think is like the agricultural part of California, to the demolition derby at the county fair, the Tulare County Fair, and they were given like $1,000 to like get their demolition derby together. And it was basically like a how to enter a demolition derby and what you need to do to modify your car and stuff. And like you said, man, in a demolition derby, Adrian Peterson is the last one standing.
Listen, I had a high school friend who got a 57 Chevy back in like 1985.
Yeah.
And he had this Charger blue, like powder blue, and he got broadsided on the driver's side door by a Ford LTD in an intersection and literally watched him pound the thing out. There was just a little scratch in the paint, and the Ford LTD was total. So that's why I think about this every time I see Adrian Peterson, running over people, because I'm like, that's what he is.
Yeah. It's great that he plays into the season again. Anyway, Chris, you've been very patient as we were doing our Santa Claus thing over here with Adrian Peterson. But I want to ask you about this. David Flynn in the chat had another good one to tee up. I'll look for the Packers this weekend. We'll touch on this, I'm sure, with start-sit questions. Jordan Love starting. Devontae Adams looks like he's going to be back. Playing Kansas City, it's the Kansas City defense. What do you think?
If there was any other matchup, it was against any other team, I guess maybe other than the Jets, sure. I think that's where we might start pulling out, other than Devontae Adams. Let's just not play anybody. Devontae Adams, maybe Aaron Jones, and then after that, we're not playing anybody. But against Kansas City, one of the teams that has been beat just time and time again, they were fighting against the Giants, more or less like fighting against themselves on was that Sunday night or Monday night. But I think that's where I think the matchup at least allows ourselves to think of a reason to have Jordan Love at the very least, and the rest of the Packers offensive pieces in our lineups for this week. So if you're thinking about keeping in even guys like Allen Lazard or whomever outside of Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and AJ Dillon as well, since we've seen AJ Dillon have at least a consistent role alongside Aaron Jones. And let's see if Matt LaFleur wants to change up the game plan to take some of the pressure off of his shoulders going up against the Chiefs. Does he want to incorporate more run concepts for Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon? So we see them being involved more often, which I think with the assumption of rational coaching, that's probably going to be the case. So if you've got Aaron Jones, you're obviously starting him, but if you've got AJ Dillon, he should be at least flex consideration at the minimum, I think, for this weekend. But at the very least, I think Jordan Love specifically. So when we saw him just in spurts and stuff throughout the preseason, not as bad. I know that there are a lot of fluff pieces that the Packers beat reporters want to put out just to make it seem like, all right, he's well ahead of where he was at when we saw him at any point during the 2020 season. And if Aaron Rodgers, let's say in the event that Aaron Rodgers were to completely jettison from the Green Bay Packers altogether, because what were the reports coming out today that he's furious that all of this news about his decision to not get vaccinated and all that, he's just absolutely furious that these things have leaked, whatever the case may be. But I think the important thing to know is that with the defensive matchup, with Jordan Love at least appearing competent, albeit during the preseason, and of course, the weapons he has around him, Devontae Adams being activated, we'll wait and see. I don't know and actually we should have asked Dr. Gene about MVS to see if he might get activated for this week. I don't think there's at least I haven't heard any rumblings if that's going to be the case or not. But at the very least, he's got Adams, he's got Lazard, he's got Cobb. We'll see what they want to do with replacement for Tunyon, if it's DeGara, Mercedes Lewis. But either way, I think there's enough around him to kind of pull him into at least a mediocre performance. Let's say whatever we were thinking about for any of the backups this past week, 10, 15 points, something that won't kill you, but at the very least give you something to kind of hang your hat on if you were either decimated by buys because you wanted to start Tom Brady or somebody like that, and there's just nothing left out on the waiver wire. Okay, fine. I think at least the process for starting him this week is justified if there's nothing else available to you.
I think that you're right to say, too, that this is a place set up, and I want to ask you this, Matt. This is a place that sets Jordan Love up for success, right? It can be a good first experience for him, and it's an opportunity for Matt LaFleur to show, hey, yeah, I have faith in my offense. I have faith in my guys to execute my offense. We went out and drafted Jordan Love because I think he can run the offense. And maybe even some of that stuff we were talking about on the couch this week about some quarterbacks just aren't ready, and it's good for them to wait. It's good for them to have time. So what do we expect, Matt? Not just from Jordan Love, but Jordan Love as he is set up by Matt LaFleur.
Well, I mean, I think it's great that he did get to sit, even though he was drafted early and probably didn't. I'll just say his film didn't merit a first-round selection in the way that you would say.
Yeah.
But obviously he has the athletic tools, and the fact that they can, build an offense or put an offense around him that's off play action that allows him to roll to one side of the field to where they can use his legs to manipulate the field, force defenders up, and allow him to make decisions that way. Not that he can't make full field reads, but that makes the transition easier for him right now to where he can do, you can maximize the threat of him running to be able to then throw the ball into open areas. That's what they tried to do with Zach Wilson. So, the fact that they, you look at this and that's something that is possible. Also with the play action game, he has a huge arm and he can make some of those Patrick Mahomes like throws. The decision making to do it hasn't been as on point as what Mahomes has been able to do in the past. So, from that perspective, if they can keep the offense structured enough and the run game going, and I think they can with what they have, and especially with the threat of using Love as a runner in zone read type of looks, if they implement a little bit of that too, RPOs and different zone read type of plays, then they can really get a lot out of this running game and then give Love high leverage targets to throw downfield. And if he's efficient with those and he doesn't make some of the hero ball decisions that he made in his, earlier in his career at Utah State, then or even really his final year there, then I think he could have a good start. And hopefully he's grown past enough of that in practice that he won't press too hard in games. But I would expect, because he hasn't had game experience, that yes, you're going to see some dumb plays because that's what rookies do. That's why coaches don't like starting them. But when you see them, they'll be hero ball. My athletic ability will be the answer to everything, and my arm and my athletic talent, kind of the Drew Lock, Pat Mahomes, Zach Wilson, just Matthew Stafford, anybody with an arm and can move, has done early in their career. But overall, there's reason to have some optimism.
Yeah, if everything comes easy against the Chiefs defense, like it has for a lot of teams, then maybe there's not a lot of opportunities for him to freelance and make those mistakes. And we'll see. Hopefully build some confidence for him. Chris, I'm going to start doing this because it's November now. Just every Thursday night as we're starting to wind up, I want to ask, any weather games on your radar as we get close to Sunday?
No, actually, for this weekend, there are none, and that makes my job so much easier. For my process, I always pull stuff on Thursday night, take a look, and then I kind of update throughout the weekend. But there are no games that are even over 13, 14 mile an hour winds. There's no rain. Even for it being early November, not even really seeing a ton of games are going to be played in cold. I think the lowest temperature I'm seeing for most of the games is 41, 42. So for the most part, the game should be, just fairly normal. Nothing that should be affected by the weather. So it's makes my job so much easier, not having to worry about this stuff. So no, nothing for this week, which is great.
Yeah, and just in case you folks don't know, those listening to the podcast too, Chris Allen, FFWX, FWX for weather, a man of many talents, and certainly can help us out on that front. But we'll be again joined by Chris on Sunday morning doing some start sits, Dr. Jene Bramel. Of course, you can find all the good things from Matt Waldman, including the appointment reading top 10 every Monday with your Footballguys subscription and Matt Waldman RSP and all of those wonderful things. And you saw Jay Moyer made his couch first appearance.
Oh, yes.
Good for Jay.
Yes.
Yeah. He's awesome.
His film breakdowns, I love watching. His film breakdowns. He's one of the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're fully into it. The Matt Waldman coaching tree in the football Twitter world, But we're all on Eric Stoner's coaching tree, really. We all are looking up at Eric Stoner. That was a real special treat to have him on the couch.
I may be going to the Hall of Fame if Steve Smith gets voted in this year. He might have vaulted to my top all-time favorite player tonight.
Well, look, I'll say this on that topic. Everybody should have at least one player that, if they could, and I guess it's Chris, you can really, you go to Canton when that player gets inducted, make a special trip. I mean, obviously it's Marshawn Lynch, but it's fun. And it's just a player that makes you feel like you want to be there the day that they're put into like Valhalla. And Steve Smith. He is a good one. All of these football guys, staffers are good ones. I'm very lucky to get to spend time with Chris, Dr. Gene, Matt, and everybody in the chat room. Eric Stoner shows up, by the way. Hey, what's up, Eric? As not necessarily the most exciting game. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see the next installment in the Mike White chapter story. Carson Wentz bounces back. So Indy says, we're still alive. And hopefully your fantasy football teams are still alive. We'll do our best to help that continue. When we come back on Sunday, folks, you're the best as always. We love spending time with you because you're so classy.
Truth teller.